What if the reflection in your mirror didn't just show your image, but the life you could have lived, or the life that could have taken you? For Lucy Bennett, it wasn't just vanity or curiosity that pulled her toward the old mirror in her apartment. It was the feeling that someone, was always watching her, waiting to show her something she could never unsee. Lucy Bennett was like any other young woman living in London. She had an ordinary job in a cafe, a small but cozy flat, and a life that was still in the process of becoming. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. That is, until the night she inherited the old, heavy mirror. It had belonged to her late grandmother, a woman who had always been peculiar and somewhat mysterious. Lucy never knew much about her, except that she had lived alone in her small cottage by the woods, and that she had a collection of strange antiques. When Lucy's grandmother passed away, she left the mirror to her, along with a cryptic note. Lucy had dismissed it as the ramblings of an old woman, but the mirror was beautiful, its frame ornate, intricately carved with strange symbols that Lucy couldn't quite decipher. She hung it in her hallway, next to the living room, not giving it much thought. At first, the mirror seemed harmless, but something about it felt wrong. The way it caught the light in a certain way, the way it didn't just reflect the room, it seemed to stretch the room, pulling everything into it. Lucy often found herself glancing at it as she walked by, noticing how it captured the angles of the room differently. It felt as though the mirror was watching her, waiting. One evening, after a long shift at the cafe, Lucy returned home exhausted, her mind still replaying the faces of customers, the sounds of the espresso machine. As she passed the mirror, she stopped suddenly, feeling an eerie coldness wash over her. She didn't know why, but something compelled her to look into it more closely. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Her reflection was the same as always, tired, disheveled, her brown hair tangled, her eyes heavy. But as she stared longer, something shifted. Her reflection moved before she did. Her reflection smiled, even though Lucy wasn't smiling, and then it stepped forward, closer to the glass. Lucy jumped back, a chill running down her spine. She blinked, but the reflection remained. It wasn't exactly her, but it was her enough to be unsettling. The figure in the glass looked like her, but the smile was too wide, the eyes too dark. There was something wrong about it. The reflection seemed to beckon, its hand pressing gently against the surface of the mirror. Lucy stumbled backward, breath quickening. She ran to her phone, but her hands shook so badly she couldn't even dial. She turned around, desperately trying to convince herself it was all a trick of the light. But when she looked back at the mirror, the figure was still there, its eyes now following her every move. For the next few days, the odd occurrences continued. Lucy's reflection moved of its own accord, sometimes a beat behind her, other times too quick. Sometimes it would stand perfectly still, but then its eyes would track her movements, no matter where she went in the room. Lucy couldn't escape it. It was always there, lurking, watching her. Sleep-deprived and panicked, Lucy began researching the mirror. She found nothing in the history books, nothing about its origin. But there were whispers of cursed objects, mirrors that could trap souls, reflections that could take you to places you never wanted to see. The more Lucy read, the more she felt the weight of something dark, something ancient, pressing in on her. She learned that mirrors were once believed to be windows to other worlds, other dimensions, and some could trap a person inside. The next night, as she lay in bed, Lucy could hear faint tapping coming from the hallway. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the sound grew louder, more insistent. She hesitated before stepping out of bed, her heart racing in her chest. She crept toward the mirror, but as she got closer, the room around her seemed to grow colder. The tapping intensified, like something, or someone, was trying to break through. When she reached the mirror, she stopped. Her reflection wasn't her reflection anymore. It was something else, something that had taken her place. The reflection stood still, its eyes fixed on her. Then, slowly, it lifted its hand and reached out, fingers brushing against the glass from the inside. The tapping continued, coming from beyond the surface. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. She reached out to touch the glass, not out of curiosity, but because something inside her felt compelled to do it. She didn't want to, but her fingers moved as if on their own accord. The moment her fingers met the surface of the mirror, everything went black. The next morning, Lucy's landlord arrived at the apartment to check on her after receiving complaints from the neighbors about loud noises. When he entered, the flat was eerily quiet. Lucy was nowhere to be found. The only thing left was the mirror, still hanging in the hallway, reflecting the empty apartment. But as the landlord passed by, he caught something in the reflection, a shadow, a figure just out of focus, standing in the corner of the room. When he turned, the apartment was still empty. And yet, as he stared into the mirror, a voice whispered from the depths of the glass, "Help me."